All right, what is going on, guys? It is Adam, aka Marf, and this is Marfoogle TV. Welcome, and I'm hoping that we have the whole fam here because this is a really important show. With the fire that is taking everyone's attention, I want to point out tonight we're going to talk about some of the other stories. Over on news, we just did a short on all of the fire, all of the new kind of updates. Over the weekend, there was, of course, some big ones, like somebody was arrested. We just talked, and we'll clean house after this article. I made a small mistake, but in a you're going to be even more amazed. I quoted what I believed was to be a stat. That stat is so much worse than I thought. So stick around. We're going to talk about, of course, world events. And, of course, this right here is one of the craziest. President-elect Don, House GOP allies are clearing the runway for him to make good on his vow to acquire Greenland. Now, if you haven't been following this and you're just popping in and you pop in every couple weeks, if you've watched this show, we've talked about this before. And when he was in office, he kind of joked about it. The media had a frenzy. They did stupid memes and, you know, him buying Greenland. But they are, for some reason, very serious. Now, we know this reason. It's a very strategic place. In fact, if you even look at the map, Greenland is extremely important. I'll just put over to the map right here. This is the United States. This is Canada, which the Don is actually making jokes about, saying, you know, the 51st state of Canada, right? Well, there's, of course, Greenland. Over up here is Russia and China. So strategically, you could see how Greenland, being in the middle or off right here, would be very important. It also has my bells ringing because I'm thinking about, you know, FOBs or fractional orbital bombardment, which actually would come from below. I wonder if Greenland has also a missile kind of importance there. Now, of course, the missiles would be coming from down underneath, but I wonder if this Greenland would be obviously for defense. Or is it something even crazier, like the movie Greenland, where they show a meteor hitting Earth in, you know, 2030 or something, and everybody ends up flying there, and it's the last place that survives a asteroid hitting Earth? We don't know, but we do know that they're trying to acquire it. The Panama Canal, he's even talking about Canada. So this is all very, very crazy. There's been a quote going around, which is, of course, "Make Greenland great again." The bill is actually titled that. According to a copy of its text obtained to Fox News Digital, JB took a blowtorch to our reputation these past 4 years, and before even taking office, President T-Man is telling the world that America is back. America economic and security interests no longer take a back seat, and House Republicans are ready to help President Don to deliver to the American people. So they are dead serious about getting Greenland. Why? What is the real reasons beyond the narrative that they are spewing? Again, we don't know. Obviously, it would be a huge, huge strategic buy for military reasons. So is there something that they know that we don't? I believe so. We're going to talk about this and so much more. This is just scratching the top of the iceberg. Does Greenland have icebergs? We'll be right back. Nothing in this show should be considered legal, medical, or financial advice. The views of the callers can differ considerably and do not necessarily reflect my opinion, Dex's opinion, or anyone else who works with the show. You should always do your own research and consult with professionals. The internet is full of fake news, so please take everything with a grain of salt. If you have not already, it helps us out if you end up going through any of our affiliates, and it helps you out if you end up protecting yourself against cybercrime. NordVPN is one of the best and one of the easiest to use. If you do not have a virtual private network, it protects your IP address, which is your online identity, which actually connects to your real address and everything else. It also connects to you. If you know anything about how they are data logging and basically getting your profiles down, you can prevent that by having a VPN. Nord is, again, one of the easiest. Download it. It's like an on switch and off switch. All you have to do. Go to marfooglenews.com/VPN. Not only will you get a giant discount on this, but you will also be helping us. I appreciate your support, and I appreciate everyone that goes through any of our affiliates. Can't say thank you enough. All right, we have a good show for you tonight. So, again, we're going to get right into it. Let's bring in my co-host / internet brother, Dex James. What is going on, and how are you doing today?
Well, hello, Adam, and hello, Fugel fam. I am doing just fine.
So, first of all, we have all of this talk about all of these countries taking over other countries or absorbing them or taking their resources. If you didn't know, and if they weren't bombarding us with other narratives that said otherwise, if you just looked at the general kind of map of arrows of countries that have said that they would take other countries or the interests of their countries, you would almost think that like some world-ending event or some catastrophic event was coming, and they're all trying to grab extra land. I don't know. It's just weird. And now I'm crazy and I've got a tinfoil hat. But what do you guys think? Let me know in the comments down below. Now, we are not live on X, Rumble, and D-Live tonight, so I apologize to you guys. It's nothing we can really do. There's alternative services that we will look at, but Restream is having regional issues with that. So, Dex, go ahead.
On the whole Greenland topic, I wholeheartedly believe that there's two things we got to worry about here. One, the obvious is it's a military purchase, right? But two is this whole idea that if you think about potentially looking at a union between the U.S., Canada, and potentially even Mexico for that matter, all the way up to Greenland, makes one giant landlocked piece of a nation that a lot of people have speculated for years was the coming change for how they wanted to order or organize the world, so to speak. It is one of the plans that a lot of people had speculated they had. So if purchasing Greenland, which by the way isn't an invasion or a takeover like Russia may be doing in Ukraine, it's literally saying, hey, Denmark will pay you for it, how much you want, and here's the money. And oh, by the way, the people of Greenland, you now become citizens of the U.S. and you get to have all the riches and prosperous opportunities of being an American. It's great. It's great for them potentially, and it's great for Denmark because they'll get paid money. But at the same time, what's the bigger picture? Now, obviously, from a military standpoint, 90% of all the missiles coming from Russia are going to come right over Greenland, coming to the U.S. That's why we have one of the biggest bases there, Patufic, which used to be called Thule. A lot of people probably recognize that name. I don't know why they renamed it, but that's a huge Space Force base there.
Yeah, and also I think it's up here, I believe, right? Somewhere up here. Or is it on one of the smaller islands? So, and another thing is, it's as far as Greenland, as far as the theory of like reorganizing everything, they talk about, the mega cities and things like that. What if there's something far, far bigger than we know that's even under this? Like, there's a lot of questions that people have about this whole thing, and it's coming very, very sudden. But there's also, you said, they would be buying it, not taking it, right? But then the other day or the last week, they were all talking about, well, they're not ruling out military force for Greenland and the Panama Canal. So what, if they turn down the money, then what, you take it by force? Like, this whole thing just reeks of something massive is about to happen. And if you
I agree. I think it's negotiations, though, right? Like, hey, we'll take it by force if we need to, but sell it to us.
Which I'm pretty sure they would want to take the money instead. But, yeah, that's just what is actually going on. And it seems to the regular person like, why, do we need Greenland right now? But I guess we are not in on those confidential closed doors meetings. What is actually happening?
Yeah, I don't know if you heard or not, but I thought I read somewhere about Putin saying he would split it with the U.S. He wanted half of Greenland, but I think he was being a little in jest in that.
So a little house cleaning real quick. I said this is what I think it is. I'm not sure. But I said when we're talking about the fires and about how California would be a big target because of how much money it makes. I remembered that they were like number 5 in GDP. I was wrong. Dex actually found it and fact-checked me, unlike those bad guys over at Facebook with no fact-checking now. He fact-checked me, and what was the stats of California? If you were another country that wanted to attack the U.S.'s financial system, the top 5 states, where is California?
It is ranked number one at $4 trillion in GDP. It's huge. It's
Put that in
you know,
perspective.
let's put it in perspective. The next biggest state would be Texas at like 2.6. I think New York is like 2.2. And if you want to think about it as the size of nations, go over to Europe. Any country in Europe is smaller than California with the exception of one, and that one is Germany. And Germany's at 4.6 trillion, where California's at 4 trillion. So almost the same size as Germany.
But you're talking about California has a higher GDP, makes more money in just California than most of the European nations. That is insane. I thought New York was number one. New York is actually at 2.2 trillion. So, and mind you, can you look up the GDP for all of Russia? I believe they're around 1 trillion or something like that, right? I might be off, but I'm pretty sure that is it.
They're 2 trillion. 2.0
Oh, no,
trillion.
that's right. They're 1 and 1. So they're about the same. So New York, just New York, makes as much money as all of Russia. California makes twice as much money, just in California, than all of Russia. Put that in your brain and smoke it, okay? This is your brain on Putin smoke. I don't know. But you get what I mean. That is a target. And all of these things are coming out about the fire. People should be waking up to it. I'm not going to say I know or that anything's a fact, but I think that it really is sus. And people now are texting and emailing me and saying, hey, oh, look, I knew it was people doing this. Look, they caught a guy. But they're so easily catching guys. The other guy went at like 3 o'clock in the afternoon with a full-on like ski mask and was like, oh, look at me, I'm lighting stuff, guys. Hey, oh, look at me. Oh, I'm ready to be tackled. When they are also looking, these also coincide, and this is why there's questions about the power stuff, is this also could be transformers blowing up. For 5 years, China's been in our infrastructure. So I just wanted to make that correction. If you were going to attack a state in the United States, you don't need to fly a plane. You take a transformer, blow it up in a spot that's dry and with high winds, and boom, you got yourself something. Go look up on Twitter the satellite footage of the 3 places catching fire at the same time. It was instantaneous and simultaneous. I'm just saying. Lots of questions, but that, again, is now number one on all of our minds, right? Everybody is talking about that. We're going to talk about the other stuff here. Oil tanker sabotage crew were poised to cut more cables when caught, Finland says. So, obviously, they found an itinerary. I bet the itinerary was just rock, paper, and scissors, with scissors circled. I think that's how the Russians do it, right? And then crew on board of an oil tanker accused of sabotaging undersea power and communications cable in the Baltic Sea were poised to cut other cables and pipelines when Finnish authorities boarded the vessel last month, the head of the Finnish investigation said. Baltic Sea nations are on high alert after a string of power, cable, and telecom link and gas pipeline outages since Russia invaded Ukraine in 2022. Leaders of the NATO member states around the Baltic Sea are set to meet in Helsinki on Tuesday to discuss the alliance response to the threat. On December 26, Finnish authorities seized all oil tanker Eagle S carrying Russian oil. They said that they suspected that the vessel had damaged the Finnish-Estonian Estlink 2 power line and 4 telecom cables by dragging its anchor across the seabed for more than 60 miles, or for you Europeans, 100 kilometers. The head of the investigation, Risto Lohi, of the National Bureau of Investigation, told Reuters the vessel was threatening to cut a second power cable, Estlink 1, and that the Baltic Connector gas pipeline between Finland and Estonia at the time it was seized. It says, quote, there would have been an almost immediate danger that the other cables or pipes related to our critical underwater infrastructure could have been damaged. Lohi said a 9th crew member from a ship had been added to the list of those being treated as suspect and barred from traveling. Finland announced earlier this month that 8 of the 24 crew members were being barred from travel. So they're just being put on in timeout, I guess. The captain of the ship is Georgian, and the crew are citizens of India and Georgia. That's kind of interesting when you talk about some of the different theories we've had earlier about Georgia this year. It says we've heard and interrogated the crew. At the moment, we have 9 crew members as suspects. They are under travel bans related to this secure the investigation. Naturally, our priority are the individuals whose tasks or responsibilities include the navigation of the ship and the operations related to the anchors. So they supposedly stopped this other big sabotage. We are seeing nonstop these operations, country against country, in these side ops. If you were playing a video game, these would be the side quests. They're cutting cables. They're doing all sorts of tests. They're of course using other countries to train their militaries. I mean, we're seeing all sorts of signs that we are already in World War III. So again, pay attention, keep your eyes peeled, keep your head on a swivel, and keep your stuff ready. Dex, Baltic Sea sabotage sets stage for the escalation.
Yeah, we've been calling this for a while now, that they're going to continue to look at these attacks, as they're calling them, to these cables and use it as a means of escalation. And now they're saying it more so outright. As we continue on the conversation about what happened there, what's interesting is on the 14th, January 14th, there's going to be a meeting of NATO's Baltic states in Helsinki, and it'll focus on the measures required to secure the critical underwater infrastructure and strengthening NATO's presence in the Baltic Sea. We know they're starting to move more fleets in. They're looking at putting more ships. They're asking other countries to put more ships in to start patrolling the area. And they're going to, take this to a new level. So NATO's tracking efforts are complicated by the sheer scale of the global commercial shipping sector in that area, because there's a lot of ships that are constantly flowing through. A vessel may have multiple beneficial owners. Its owners may not necessarily be from the state where it's registered, so it may actually be attributing to activity to a given state, which we saw, like in the incidents in Taiwan recently. I think the ship was another country, but actually the owner was Hong Kong. So you had to sort of follow the trail of who actually owned the ship to realize, oh, it was actually a Chinese vessel, even though it was registered in a completely different country. And it didn't look like a Chinese vessel in that particular case. So the Russians have quite a broad spectrum of commercial vessels to choose from. Kushal said it's actually quite odd. In some ways, they opted for a vessel that's associated with their shadow fleet. So nonetheless, the fact that NATO is pushing hard at this narrative of using this as an escalation point, not only to put more ships and start patrolling the waterways and the commercial ships that are coming through, but also as a means of potentially escalating the conflict with Russia. So I think it makes it ripe for them to create another opportunity to say, look, it could be a Fantastic Freddy style event where it's set up, or it could just be that they find the next saboteur and it escalates to full-on conflict from there.
And as far as the shadow fleet, the Atlantic Council described this shadow fleet as made up of aging vessels, often sailing without Western insurance, so nothing through the Western international system, under opaque ownership and with regularly changing names and national registrations. So using shell companies, changing owners, doing all of these weird things. Allied officials say some of the ailing ships are doubling as low-tech saboteur vessels. As they say that Russia might have as many as 1,400 ships. And again, like Dex said, they're pointing out that it was almost weird that they pretty much made it obvious that this was part of the shadow fleet, right? Something seems off to me. I'm not nearly smart enough to see the picture on this because I'm not familiar with all of the naval travel and all of the stuff regarding this. But I do have a little bell that goes off when something doesn't seem right. There have been other events in the ocean with different ships that ended up starting whole conflicts. So with this seems to me like, they keep pushing the idea that something like this, an anchor dragging, it could be an escalation that ends up turning into a stupid escalation into a full-blown world war. You wouldn't think it would, but look at Tonkin and look at other events that, they really didn't think that would even happen. And they kind of made it happen. And before we move on, make sure, if you haven't already, go check out EMP Shield. All of the affiliates on this show, any ad that you'll see, are actual products that we think that will either help you through a disaster, save you through one, or make you comfortable through one. It could actually save your life. In the case of this is a device that will ground the signal of both EMP strikes from any adversary, non-nuclear EMP from a homemade device, or even a Carrington-level event from the sun from a massive solar flare. Again, this is a device that will ground that before it can fry your cars, trucks, motorcycles, boats, generators. Most importantly, if you want, even if the grid doesn't come back on, if you want to have your generator, make sure to have one of these on it. And you can also even wire it into your home, and it will protect everything within 250 linear feet from where it is wired in. That means all of your devices, everything after 40 different EMP strikes, they are going to be able to start up and go again. You go, oh, the grid's going to be down for 2 years. You will have your generator up. It will be protected. You'll have your whole system going. Now, for those of you going, I don't even have a generator. I don't even have food. I've got 3 days of food in my shed. I would highly recommend that all of you start getting food, water first before you get this. But if you travel, if you work far from work, get one of these on your cars, because it's going to mean the difference between you getting home or you getting out. First do food, then do water, then do medicine, then do this. This should be 4 on your list. But if you don't have this yet, it takes 10 minutes to put in your car, and I promise you, you will thank yourself in the event of either an EMP or a solar flare. Because being able to get out or to start your generator or to have your stuff working when nobody else's does, it's going to be phenomenal. Go to marfooglenews.com/EMP. Make sure to use the code MARF. The company is also doing agencies like DOD and DHS. So they're quietly preparing. That means we should be loudly preparing. Again, DHS has been warning about it. DOD has been warning about it. They're painting a picture for us, and hopefully it never happens. All right, and then $50 off with our code, and you help our channel. Again, very, very, very appreciated. All right, and then we have Star Wars threat to the West, how doomsday EMP space nukes could cripple U.S. and allies by frying, and I forgot what the last part of this was. If it loads, I think it's... Okay, okay. Either way, so what they're talking about is, of course, the same systems that we have talked about. And Dex and I were talking about this right before the show. We have always talked about how places like North Korea have satellites that are going right over our sweet spot. And when we were talking about the infrastructure before the show with this whole California thing, it's like there's a setup there waiting to happen. If you were to launch a nuke at us, right away there would be mutually assured destruction. They are actually pointing out in this article that essentially mutually assured destruction no longer applies. And that's what many people are saying, because if you have something in space that can be essentially done instantly, then there's no time to respond. Now, the U.S. has systems that would respond either way, but they are actually saying that that mutually assured destruction is probably going to go away in the near future because of systems like this. Dex, do you want to talk about what they're talking about here and how, especially what we were talking about with Russia launches and things like that?
Yeah, certainly. And the extent of the headline is that it's going to fry critical infrastructure and killing vital satellites. So, and that Putin already has the weapon in development, if not already there, as we've talked about at great length. We even think North Korea could potentially have technology there. But the point of this story here is, besides the fact that we obviously have 2 huge nuclear arsenals, when you just think of Russia and the U.S. and going back to the Cold War, we both watch when one launches to the other. We would be able to detect it in advance. We would be able to know that as soon as they launched, we would launch back, and it would be mutually assured, and that would basically keep everybody at bay. But what they're describing now is, and they're bringing to the forefront in the media, this is not new. If you've been watching this channel for 5 years now, you would know we've been talking about this for a long time. So it's not new news to us, but it's new news to everyone else, in the sense that the media is putting it out there saying, oh, by the way, now that they've got nukes in space on satellites, they can sit there and loiter, as if you want to use that term that we get used to with drones, where they just hang out and wait for the right time. Well, they're hanging out in orbit and you never know when they're going to strike. So you don't have detection. You don't have the ability to see a launch. Certainly you can launch an ICBM and turn it into an EMP, but you don't need to because you can just put a small yield nuke in a satellite and let it sit and detonate it whenever the time is right. And that's what they're talking about, is that whole notion of mutually assured is gone, because what's going to happen is a high altitude EMP from Russia, China, even North Korea for that matter, we'll talk about that in a minute, or the US for that matter, thinking about how we would either defend against or even maybe offend against Russia, could be done. And it could be done by doing it from a satellite, by leaving it in space for however long you want and striking at any moment when it's the opportunistic time. Now, just to remind people how that works, when a nuke goes off in the upper atmosphere, it creates ions which then come down to Earth and basically look for copper wire. I'm oversimplifying this, but it's called induction. Those ions induct into copper wire, which our grid is made up of, your house is made up of, your car has tons of copper wire in it, and all of that wire acts as a giant antenna saying, give me all your ions, and it just floods it in so fast, and everything plugged into it gets this massive surge of energy, which basically fries all the components that are hooked up to those wires, whether it be as simple as your refrigerator or your air conditioner in your home, to your computer plugged into the wall, to the starter or the computer system in your car getting fried from the energy that comes into those copper wires that are running all throughout your car. That is the simplistic version of what goes on with a high altitude EMP. Now, Adam, you want to talk about North Korea and their satellites?
Yeah, and so again, you have events that are happening every day. You have North Korea going over, what is it, every 1 or 2 days. It's like something like this. There is no telling that if they got put up there years ago, that somebody isn't paying attention to that now. That's the other thing, is when you launch things into space, they are tracking all of these different events, but you still have humans doing it. Just like we saw with the false missile alert in Hawaii, which some people don't believe that was even false, that something weird and huge was covered up. But with that, you actually got to see behind the scenes of the emergency alert system and who's watching it. There's human beings. Now, they did a hit piece on that place, basically saying that everybody was watching Netflix on their phones. Think about the people that are in the government or in the military that might be watching these systems. Now, they might be laying some of these things over to AI to watch and to automatically keep track of, but then there's the problem with what if there's an error, or what if there's a problem with the systems? I bet you there's mostly humans watching these 24/7, and they're tracking all of these things in space. But there's only so much they can do. If something goes over Kansas and it's been going over for 6 years, they could put something up in the sky somewhere else, and everybody's going to be watching that in the, watching in these systems. Meanwhile, something's going right over Kansas. Boom, you knock down the whole grid. The reason why EMP is the most likely scenario, it does not take a life directly. But people would end up, after water and energy systems are down, the grid is down, nobody has water. Now, all of us are mostly preppers here. So most of us have more than 3 days of food in our house. Most of you, and even your extended family, because you guys are constantly bombarding them to get extra food, or bombarding them with headlines that make them think in the back of their head, hey, I should. But the majority of the United States, and I'm only speaking for where I live, people are not prepared. And that is going to be another of the big threats, but that's not going to be the biggest. They say 90% of us would die in the first year. That's not because we're taking each other out and looting each other. That is because we would die of thirst and starvation. And thirst and starvation are the biggest issues here. And if you can fix those two things, then we would all be better off. If there's not somebody who's so desperate that they're trying to rob you for your food, then obviously it's a safer situation. But unfortunately, it's not real life. Every disaster that's happened, Hurricane Katrina, the recent North Carolina, you take any huge big disaster in any country, really, it doesn't have to be the United States, you see that people go to any lengths to survive. And that's where it really does get dangerous. But you also see that almost no one is prepared. We've seen it time and time again. Something like this, they are already in our infrastructure. They could set up things to happen all at once. And if you've been following this show for years, then you know we have shown you over years it's almost like a slow setup to a massive domino effect event that they are going to knock out absolutely everything. I've had comments say, well, why would they spend billions of dollars? All of these countries are connected money-wise. Why would they invest in the United States? Like, take, for example, China invested to put up all these systems around the country in the U.S. or helped with the production of stuff and all of this. I say, one, that's suspicious, but two, they could knock it all down. The people that are in charge of these companies, they don't care if all of us get wiped out. They don't care if the whole systems they just put up get destroyed, because they get to put them up again. When all of the dust settles, it would be their companies and their contracts and these government, run companies or government contracted companies that would be rebuilding again. That's why they don't care if their whole system gets taken down after all this work. You're thinking of the work as a person probably on the worker bee side of it. Our hard work put up this whole system across the country and they would just knock it down. That doesn't make sense. No, it doesn't. Especially when all of us put so much work into building it, right? Well, they don't care about that. They care about the end result and future end results and goals that, honestly, none of us are even seeing. These people think that they have a plan for the world that is for the better, and they believe that we would not accept it, so they do not bother telling us it, and they believe that some sacrifices need to be made. The only thing I'm scared about is if we are the sacrifices. So again, I would highly recommend having food and water right now, especially with the timing of everything. But if in the next couple years you still have that food, you should be getting food that lasts at least 2, 3, 4 years. Get yourself freeze-dried food too. Like, you should be set up, because in the next couple years, look at what we are lined up for. Look at the changes that are coming into play in 2025 and 2026. We're in a scary place. And they keep talking about space, whether it's a setup event, an op, a Ganda thing, whatever it may be. Something is happening. Something is definitely coming. And then China constructing D-Day style barges for possible Taiwan invasion. Now, they're pointing out that these are for Taiwan invasion, but others have actually pointed out that these D-Day style barges, when you think of that, you think of these smaller boats that people, they went up on the boat, on the shores and had the ramp drop, and then everybody rushed out. These are for tanks. These are for vehicles. These are for big vehicles. So these are giant barges that are essentially made. In fact, it's in the thumbnail. You can see on the right that there's a ship, and one engineering feat that they did was these pillars. Essentially, in the worst storms, that this would stabilize the ship. It has a ramp that would actually drop down, and then they could unload tanks onto the beach. Now, is this really for Taiwan? Again, it will be initially, but I think that they're designing it with future endeavors in mind. Those pillars, some engineers are looking at that, and they're building this to go across the sea. As far as the other things that they're designing, they're mass producing these carriers, drone carriers. Drone carriers are something that we can't even wrap our head around yet, because we really haven't seen much of it. I've shown you all of the videos and the things that are coming out from these conferences and these tech shows and things like that, but it really is terrifying. This last New Year's Eve in Seattle, they not only did a fireworks show, but they did this massive drone show. That's the extent that the American people or the European or the Canadians have seen, is these organized drones. Now think about an explosive strapped to each one of those. Then think that this is a country that can mass produce millions of them, that has the AI advantage, that now has a head start on us, that is actually ahead in AI and autonomous technology, and has the actual drone carriers to match. All of this is happening in a very suspicious time. And if you look at their mass production right now of these certain types of D-Day barges, this almost looks like something that they're looking even beyond Taiwan after this. And I'm not trying to be like how they say Russia's going to take all of Europe. I do think that China would take Japan or would attack the U.S. They want to be number one. It's part of their heavenly mandate. It is in their, essentially in their religion. They cannot be number two in the world forever. They want to be number one, and they will do whatever they can. And Xi's getting old, and I believe he wants to do it in his lifetime. But these barges are insane. Dex, did you see how big these things are? These are massive.
They're huge. And look, this is not a carrier, guys. Think about this. This is a barge that goes with the fleet. Okay, the fleet is full of cargo. The fleet is full of tanks and other equipment inside the bigger ships. This barge, think of like what we talked about in the Strip over in the Middle East, in just south of Israel, where we set up this temporary pier so that the ships could come up to the pier and they could roll stuff in and bring in all that. That's what this ship does by itself, and they're already building 3 or 4 of these at once, expecting to have maybe 20 or more of these. So this ship will come in, and that's a 120-meter bridge that comes off the front. It's a floating bridge with suspension cables, but that bridge gets extended out, built out quickly, all the way to land, so they can be the distance of a football field from the beach. So you imagine that, and then they have those pillars, as Adam was talking about, that then go down into the ground or into the water to touch the land below in the seabed to anchor it. And then the big ships pull up to it and just start offloading tanks as quickly as possible, and basically going the distance of probably like 2 football fields. And they're loading up, these mobile floating piers that they can just put on the shore immediately.
It reminds me, there's a scene, if you haven't seen the new Gladiator 2, they weren't too original in naming that one, but in the first scenes of the movie, you have naval ships pulling up, and they raise these towers and then drop a bridge down. Essentially the ships, the Roman ships, I think, pull up to it, and they have a bridge over to the actual castle wall because the castle's on the water. I thought this is like the modern day version of that. Only, this is like 10 football fields long. This thing is so massive, and I say this like it's one. They're mass producing 4 at the same time. Taiwan is happening. And if you believe that the U.S. is going to do what they say they're going to do, and I believe the Dawn at the very least is, and this isn't happening in the next 7 days, then we are going to war with China. And it's so funny. We are actually kind of lining up with more so what the comments were a couple years ago, 2027. It would actually make sense. So even if it got, and if people hear that, they go, oh, I hope that it gets kicked, the can gets kicked down the street for another 2 years. But that doesn't mean anything. Imagine 2019. You guys all remember that, right? It's already been 6 years. Imagine how fast 2 years is going to go by. They have been producing like no one has ever seen before. That is not for show. That's for go. We are in a lot of trouble right now, and they're already fitting in things like the preemptive changes to our bills and to our laws. They're trying to get women on the draft again. They keep talking about it. They talked about it last year, the year before. I believe at some point they are going to do it. And one of the things, too, especially about this whole movement that has happened in the last 4 years, is that there is no absolute difference between men and women, right? At least that's what they are pushing. So why would only men be drafted? I think about this with 3 daughters and one that is of draft age, and that scares the hell out of me. And it should. People, well, you don't want them to do their service? I got a comment the other day. So you don't want your daughter to do service? I said, no, it's not that. I don't want my daughter to die, especially for a conflict that I saw coming a million miles away and for 10 years happening. Never would I think that, my daughter would be drafted. As far as these ships, this is a big thing. And is anybody paying attention to it? Probably not. I would watch China very closely because I think that they are the kind of head honcho. They are the one pulling the puppet strings for many countries. I don't think that they're in charge of the world because I think they're working with some of these other people. And I think that there's an end result that really does favor all of the top. Us, we're going to be set in the dust. We're going to be in the bottom. And then we have NATO allies worried that the U.S. can't defend Europe and counter China. But there's a way. Dex, and I mean, we've actually called this out over the last few years.
Right.
multi peer-to-peer war, but now they're saying just China.
Yeah, so another study. So China's threat to Taiwan poses a profound dilemma for NATO. A new study suggests that while splitting the U.S. military resources to focus is a problem, and it's possibly a manageable one, but that's because the American forces need to stop a Chinese fleet in the Strait of Taiwan are not the same as those suitable for destroying Russian tanks in the European Union, as they say. But I don't know that it's actually going to be that easy. So, for example, it's unclear whether the armor and multiple launch rocket systems, MLRS, have as much utility in a Sino-American conflict, a primary maritime theater, as they do in Europe, although both capabilities have a role in each theater, coming from this analyst. But America has to cope with the dichotomy between the Atlantic and the Pacific, and we've been dealing with that since World War II. In the European theater, a ground conflict fight between a huge mechanized army and hordes of land-based aircraft, albeit smaller naval component in the sea battle to resupply Britain. If you think about what we did in World War II versus the Pacific theater, which was all naval and air conflict and a lot of island hopping and taking of islands, it was much different. But compounding the problem is the modern armies and the weapons are expensive, and the U.S. could afford to fight a two-front war in 1941, but would it be able to actually do that today? That's a really good question, is how would we be able to do that? I mean, I get it. We do spend the most money of any country in the world for our military. We probably have, I know a lot of us think we have the biggest, mightiest military ever. But at the end of the day, when it comes time to actually start depleting the resources in a conflict on two ends of the world, so to speak, between Europe and the Pacific, how quickly will we be able to replenish all this? And how much are we going to be involved in, or how much are we reliant on, say, China already with componentry or manufacturing for pieces and functions that go into our existing military products? And I know that we've been pushing to get away from that, but it's not like America is sitting here ready to manufacture tanks all of a sudden, right? I know we do manufacture tanks in America, but it's not like the old days. It's not like we just had manufacturing everywhere and we could just ramp it all up.
And so say we go into a full-scale war, and you're probably thinking, oh, well, in World War II, they turned Q-tip factories into bullet factories, right? Well, most of our manufacturing has left. So you don't even have the structure of the empty buildings to turn into that. I mean, yeah, you've got a lot of empty buildings now, but no businesses inside that can switch over their machinery because they're probably moved overseas because of the rent or the real estate or some other reason why, or the prices or anything else. I mean, look at Elon moving from California to Texas. It's like there's all these huge companies that either went out of the country or left to basically save their business, right? Or to be greedy. One of the two. But when it comes down to war, a place like China, think about how they can mass produce in a wartime. And think about this. What if they already have switched over? Is that a claim? Yeah, it is. It's actually claimed that they're already buzzing up their wartime manufacturing, much like Russia is right now, which Russia has. Russia's turned all of these different factories. There's businesses that the Russian government's gone to and says, hey, you're no longer making this. You're doing this for us, and we're going to pay you more than what you were making. That is happening all over Russia, and that's because of Ukraine, because they're going up against NATO infrastructure. But when we go to war with China, think about their manufacturing prowess. And I call it prowess. I'm not trying to, pat them on the back. But people are so sure that they're going to make these half-ass naval ships that they're going to fall apart halfway here. If you think that, you have not done your research on what China has been doing the last 20 years. They have 1.4 billion people, which just out of those numbers, statistically, you have Einsteins born in so many. I forget, we covered that. It was like 1 out of every 2 million people or something. So they have geniuses in their country. And you don't necessarily, you need those smart people. Those smart people, the more that you have, the more that things move forward. The more inventions, the more things get discovered, the more walls get broke through. So we are in a lot of trouble. And people want to keep thinking that we're the strongest and the best, which I believe we are. but you're not going to see the big bad wolf behind you gathering like 40 other wolves to knock us over the back of the head. The biggest guy in the bar, he's 10 feet tall. They say the bigger they are, the harder they fall, but you take a 45 to the big guy, he's done. If you hit him in the right spot, they're gone. It doesn't matter how buff you are, strong you are, you get hit in the head, boom, you're done. So, and I think that that's what they're targeting. They're targeting our very specific situations. And the military in our Fugel family, active duty, they are getting prepped. You should look at the people that are in the know. What are they doing? Look at freaking people like Zuckerberg. That dude is building a $270 million mansion with a freaking 5,000 square foot bunker in it. He's having cattle flown into Hawaii. I mean, like, look at what they're doing. They're not doing it so they can say, I have a bowling alley in my bunker. I bet that's fun, but again, I don't think that's why they're doing it. All of the richest people, including the people that we absolutely know have their fingers in almost everything, they have bunkers under all of their properties. People like Mr. Gates. People in Seattle know this, like the Medina thing. Not going to say too much more because I'm here and there's probably people in suits walking around here waiting for people to say it. But in almost all of his properties, he's got these massive, massive compounds. So if people like that are doing it, then something is on its way. Los Lobo, thank you for joining and thank you for being here for 18 months. Bonnie Myers, thank you for hitting 2 months today as a member. Thank you, K. Parker Frazier. Mark Schaefer, thank you. A lot of old school Fugel fam here too. Patricia Parent, thank you so much. Miss Constitutional Rights, Sean C. Gen X Ben, LW, Susie Camo. We have Jen Miller, thank you, Jason Bishop. And then Globetrotter, thank you. Lisa Douglas, thank you for hitting 4 months. Thank you, I appreciate that. And then Thomas, thank you. And then Inquiring Minds, I believe I did maybe say something, but I don't think I read your comment the other day. Said sharing some of my birthday win. Inquiring Minds, thank you for the support on the last show. I appreciate that. Olga Turan, Carol this week, I appreciate you. And then Steve, thank you for subscribing. And a couple new people just joined. Arlene Harbor, thank you for being a member for 12 months. And then See Her Think, thank you. Stephanie Willards, thank you for subscribing just a minute ago. T. Dillard, thank you for subscribing. And Lawson Pridgeon, welcome to the family. I hope you guys enjoy the show. All right, and then China's whale-inspired tech hunts 1,400 Starlink satellites in record time. So this is crazy. And again, we point out that we cover this because these should be U.S. does, first ever this. U.S. does first ever this. U.S. does first ever this. For the last 4 years, and I've noticed a change. In the last 4 years, there has been very little of that happening. You really have to dig to find these huge, huge changes. There's a lot of article about how the U.S. is tweaking this or, improving certain technologies. But China has been coming out with these just insane, crazy inventions or claims, and I hope they are claims, about stuff that could change the world as far as if they get an advantage over the U.S. militarily. Chinese researchers have simulated a space operation to approach and potentially target the Starlink satellite constellation. The team, led by Wu Yunhua, director of Aerospace Control Department and Nanjing University of Aeronautics and Astronautics, demonstrated the computer simulation that nearly 1,400 Starlink satellites could be approached within 12 hours using just 99 Chinese satellites. These satellites could be equipped with lasers, microwaves, and other devices for reconnaissance, tracking, or other operations. The potential military application value of the Starlink mega constellation has been highlighted in the Russia-Ukraine conflict. In recent years, the militarization of space has intensified, posing a significant threat to China's space security. Direct quote. It is particularly important to track and monitor its operational status. That was Wu's team, published on January 3rd, speaking about how Starlink is a threat to China. Additionally, energy-intensive equipment like lasers requires adequate sunlight for recharging, further complicating operational procedures. So they're saying that this is not easy. that SpaceX has launched over 6,700 satellites with plans to expand this number significantly. Tracking such a massive constellation with limited resources poses extreme challenges. Precise orbital calculations and required maneuver satellites close enough to detect Starlink satellites without causing accidents. So one thing I have noticed a pattern of is every time something comes out from China, there is every person that can possibly debunk or try to say that this doesn't happen. Nobody is denying they have it, and that I would expect to see, but they're not. They're saying this is incredibly hard to do. They're basically saying, and they don't say it, but that means if this is true, they have done something that is absolutely mind-blowing. 99 Chinese satellites taking out 6,700 satellites, that's something straight out of sci-fi. So what are they actually doing? The algorithm, and again, they claim to have overcome these obstacles using a binary artificial intelligence algorithm inspired by hunting techniques of whales. Now, I actually believe a lot of these things in military things actually happen from animals. You see boats, you see planes, you see aerodynamics heavily focused on animals because animals and nature actually have some of the craziest things solved that humans could never do. And we look at frogs, we look at whales, we look at leopards and different animals, birds especially for aerodynamics. And you look and you get a lot of these inspired things. I believe the plane that was the supersonic plane that was designed off of the design of a bird, right? The algorithm helps Chinese satellites work in tandem to hunt Starlink satellites effectively. According to the team, their technology can generate a reliable action plan within 2 minutes, making it a significant breakthrough in space operations. The hunting behavior of whales, which channel small fish into their mouth while conserving energy, provided the foundation with this method. By mimicking this natural process, the Chinese satellites are able to perform complex tracking tasks efficiently. So you better hope that this is not true, because not only have they designed something that can take our older satellites out, at least they've claimed that, now they're talking about the new Starlink satellite systems, which many have said, well, even if our old stuff, gets knocked down, there's so many Starlinks that they will be able to be a backup military installation, that luckily Elon's in the United States and that he would be able to help us. I've read you guys articles stating this. But now they're saying they can take all of that down. Better hope that this is all fake and that this is all claims. Dex, very, very crazy stuff.
Yeah, I mean, just look, imagine if tomorrow they started taking out Starlink. I mean, yes, they can only do 1,400 in 12 hours, but in, a
week.
Like 2 days? No. In like maybe 48 hours, the entire constellation could be taken down. How can we react in space within 48 hours unless we have a defensive system up there? And have we even gone so far as to think that we have to defend our communications, our commercial or consumer communications that are up in space? Like, I don't think, obviously we've invested in Space Force, and I'm sure that they've been going down this path of, they're probably saying the same thing. Hey, we need to be up there fighting and shooting and doing whatever we got to do to protect our own assets. But it's a real problem when you think about it. We're at a different stage in our evolution with space and technology and capabilities that are up in low Earth orbit that, it could be as simple as a 24, 48-hour period, and the entire constellation of Starlink that's taken years to put up and billions of dollars and supports the internet for millions and millions of people could be wiped out. And they're looking at using it it's used as the backbone for part of the military functionality and things like that. And there's all sorts of other things that Starlink probably does that we don't have a clue. That could all be wiped out within 2 days.
I want to point out something that was said. I've spoken to two people that are now with Space Force. One, this was a few years back, and it's my sister's ex now, / back together. My sister's probably watching this, but back together, not together, whatever, friends, whatever. But he was recruited from Boeing. He was working on laser projects for Boeing, and then ended up getting recruited to Space Force. What he said was really, really unnerving. He said, people think that the United States has it handled. Boy, do they have it wrong. That there are so many areas where we have so many holes, and it's purely because of our own ego. And I think that that is something that echoes across the way. We see how disorganized our government is. We see how divided our government is. We see how many human beings, I mean, look at just take any 10 congressmen, Republican or Democrat, either side, and just put them on a pedestal and just look at them and go, this is who's supposedly making all the decisions or helping make the decisions. It's really scary. I mean, both sides have horrible examples, doing stupid things in movie theaters or doing horrible things that are unforgivable. These are human beings, okay? And some of them are the worst of the worst. And I don't know why. It just seems like people in those positions end up having just absolutely the worst scandals. Those are the people that are supposedly in charge. So really think about that. A lot of us have faith in the military because the military has such a stringent setup. It has a system that works and that they've not tried to edit it for so long. But in the last 5-6 years, one thing that military members across the board have said in our audience is that they are just tweaking things left and right. Dex and I did a video. I noticed that there were all of these certain people that were getting fired because of loss of confidence. Dex and I did research into that. Remember when we did that that show? We did do a show, right? I don't think we just recorded and not put it out.
No, yeah, we did it.
Yeah. We talked about all of these loss of confidence firings in the last 4 years. Essentially, if they supported a certain side, it seemed there was a huge pattern there. They were gone. They didn't have an official reason. They basically just said, oh, well, it's a loss of confidence. They are screwing with the entire military. And by they, I don't know who. But we do know that it's happening. They're pushing things in. They're changing things. Now, I'm not trying to debate about whether the changes are right or wrong. I'm saying you're changing a system that's always been primarily the same. And when you do something, when you fix something that's not broken, when you fix something that literally is one of the best, and then change things, you start having holes in your defenses. And that's what we've been doing for 4 years straight. A lot of people ended up dropping out because of requirements that they had to do if they were in. A lot of people dropped out because of views. I mean, they were doing surveys. People were scared to join the military. I talked to Fugel family members that were about to join, young guys, saying, I wanted to join, but then I saw that they were doing all of these weird surveys into like what you believed politically and all this. I think we need to really, start looking at China and looking at all of our enemies as a whole and realizing that there are bigger things going on here. But when it comes down to it, we are right at the cusp of war. And before we move on, make sure to go check out Jace. If you haven't already, Jace Medical is a very easy service to use. You do it from the comfort of your couch. You can go on your computer or tablet. You can get a doctor's appointment, essentially with a board-certified doctor, and very easily get yourself something called a Jace case. It's an emergency kit. It has all of your most commonly prescribed antibiotics. It has, of course, other extras that you can add in, like albuterol, emergency inhalers, breathers, again. You can get all sorts of other medications, add-ons as well. There's a whole list. But again, that will be handy for any disaster. It could be an earthquake, a fire, power down, grid down. It could be anything. It doesn't have to be the end of the world. It could be a hurricane. So again, this is good in almost any situation where you have no access to a hospital or to a pharmacy. And that's something it's hard to imagine, but that's what people are predicting are going to happen. Go to marfugelnews.com/Jace and make sure to use the code MARF. Not only will you get a savings, but you will help our independent channel at the same time. Also, while you're there, check out Jace Daily because you can actually get a 12-month extended supply of your meds or somebody that you are caregiving for to have a year of their meds set aside. So if the power goes off tomorrow or something happens, you know that you're set and you have that med you are dependent on. Now, many people argue like, oh, all of those are bad, and there's natural ways to do any of these things. I agree with you. But there's so many millions of people that have meds that they are literally dependent on and they can't get off of, or they've been on them so long that now they're screwed and there is no other way to manage their, issues. I see a lot of examples of that in the Fugel fam, like with heart issues and blood pressure issues and all sorts of other things. So again, marfugelnews.com/Jace, and make sure to use the code MARF. All right, and Los Angeles wildfire, the toll has now surged to 24. It was at 5, then it went to 10. Now over the weekend, it's at 24. That number, of course, isn't the most shocking number. The real shocking numbers are in the financial system. How much has actually been damaged in Los Angeles is staggering. And I'm sure you're going to see staggering and unprecedented in every mainstream op. Because essentially, this is the only thing that people are talking about. Meanwhile, on the back pages, they're making D-Day style barges that really look like they're not trying to get 120 miles across the ocean, that they're trying to get, 2,000 miles across the ocean. All of these things are going to take up everybody's time. And that's because this is one of the biggest events ever. There are a lot of people, this is such an easy thing to get wrapped up only in because it is shady. It is suspicious, and it's very, very creepy. If you didn't watch the Marfoogle News short that we just did, like I said in the beginning, Target, one of the biggest targets is California. I did not realize California was number one. I knew they were in the top 5, and I thought they were number 5. They are number 1. Dex, if you were another country that was trying to hurt the U.S. financially and financially would put a hamper on everything, including if you wanted to attack them later down the road, where would you hit? If you were to hit a state in the U.S., where would you hit?
Oh, well, obviously the big ones to me would be, California, New York, and Texas, all based on their size. Texas probably be the last one to go after because it's just, I don't know if you'd want to go there, but there's too much resistance. But certainly,
pew, pew, pew.
You think about, we've seen them target New York numerous times. And when you think about just the sheer financial power of the state of California, it's as big as a country. It can be a country. A thriving country all of itself. So, if you think about takeover, if you think about destruction or hurting, yeah, it's a prime target.
And in California, I'm going to pull up, obviously there's just unbelievable pictures. It's so insane how bad the California situation has got. Let's see here. I mean, it really is unbelievable. It's apocalyptic. That is what they keep saying. It's across every mainstream article. It's something that is so bad you don't want to see something like this happen, but you definitely can't look away. It's like a car accident. The entire world is rubbernecking right now. Essentially, huge rubbernecks everywhere, if that makes sense. But yeah, everyone is watching this. There is not anywhere I've gone in the last 5 days, 6 days that people aren't talking about this. I went to the 2 different dentists. People were talking about it in the lobby. People were saying, "Oh, did you see that? Did you see what happened now? Oh my gosh, look at this!" Strangers were showing each other phones, look at this. And I'm thinking in my head, one of my actual family members lost their home in this. This is a horrible, horrible event. But I think that people need to start loudly asking every question there is. Don't leave it up to somebody else. Ask every question you can, even if you have no platform. If you have 2 followers, go on Twitter and ask. If you have an Instagram or a Facebook or a YouTube, ask these questions. People should be asking what the hell is happening here. They are visually showing us over the last couple days several rumors and unconfirmed and confirmed arrests of people that are possibly doing this. Everybody is going to check the box and go, oh, this is man-made and that they're doing this on purpose. So it's pointing out that this could be an attack. It also takes, as Dex said, it takes the blame off the power companies so they don't have to pay out millions of dollars because of some sort of mistake with them. But one thing I think of is China has been in our energy infrastructure for over 5 years, and they're waiting for the right time to attack. What would be the right time? Well, I've said for the last couple of years, right before the change of power would be the right time. I've said for the last 6 months, right before the change of power would be the right time. It would also be right before a windstorm, which both we've known about for weeks. This polar vortex / weird weather that was coming into California, weird weather coming into this. All you need to do, you don't need to fly a plane into a building. You need a lighter and a wind forecast, right? That's what it looks like. But what if these were transformers that were hacked and blew up? I don't know if that's possible. If you're a lineman, tell me, is that possible? But one thing I think about is how if this was a hack or if this was something somehow intentional, then they have a perfect patsy, and then everybody goes case closed, and then we are damaged millions of dollars, billions of dollars. I mean, Dex, do we have a number on how much damage this has done so far?
It's over 50, or it's around 50 billion minimum, but they're suggesting it could be up to 150 billion. It's going to be the worst of all time.
Which is obviously a super dent on a country with 35 trillion in debt. It is the richest, highest GDP state, and it's so insane to me that they cut the budget on such vital things, on such a vital state to our country. Like the California, as much as you may like or dislike it, for you California people there, I'm sure you represent, but a lot of people don't like it. For as much as we don't like it, you in California and the state itself is contributing to this entire country a lot. It is number one GDP in the country. Over $4 trillion. That is absolute insanity. That's twice as much as all of Russia. So I hope that this does not go. I wonder where this is going to go, especially with them catching people now with the arrests that they've made. There's more information over on Marfoogle News. We did a short over there, but is this one of the biggest distractions ever made? What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments down below. Now, remember, make sure to also go check out your mods. Make sure to thank them, dropping them in the chat right now. Everyone from Bones to Wages World and every awesome person like Ilea in between. Trinity, of course, you got Rip, you got RGL, you got Jammer. Thank you so much, Chance, for holding it down on DLive when we are able to go live over there. And then CJ Blaze, Bones, and the whole rest of the team. Lisa R. Hall, of course, longest running mod, asterisk. Love you guys. And yeah, it's just craziness. Thank you so much, Dex. I appreciate your service tonight.
Much love. Great job, brother.
And let's see here. Darren, thank you so much. I appreciate all of you guys. Thank you. Much love. I hope all of you have a wonderful night. Don't believe I missed anything. Love you. Be safe. Be prepared. And Marf out. It is now time for the shoutro. It's not an outro. It's not a shout out. It's a shoutro. And just remember, we can't go right over, so you should be ported over, but if you are not, make sure to go to the link down below if you want to join us for jams, where I say thank you to the people that matter most, you.